Hey, how are we doing? It's Nico at Deltastring.com. Deltastring is the home of Zendesk migrations, Zendesk automations, Zendesk integrations, Zendesk applications. And today we're talking about a specific case of Zendesk migration, and that is moving from Salesforce Service Cloud over to Zendesk support. These projects are always a real headache, right? They're very complicated, and the kind of business where you're going to find making this particular move is going to be a big and complicated business. And they will often have their own understanding around sort of operational excellence, things like that, right? But we still need to get certain things in place to make this a success. And when you're doing kind of gig work, when you're doing contracts, when you're coming in as an agency that does migrations, as we do, then you really need to have your process really defined here. And so here's what you need to do. You need to, first off, you need to understand everything about your processes that live in Salesforce. And the key points are where tickets are escalated to a different team. Because when you do a migration, you don't usually do everything. You don't just go, bang, right, that system's dead, everyone's over here now. Especially in a larger organization, you do it a team at a time. So those escalation points are now going to be transfers between systems. You're going to need to pass that ticket from Zendesk to Salesforce, where one of those teams will probably still be, and then it'll need to probably come back again. So you need to really understand those decisions, and we've looked in a previous video about how you map out these decisions and how you understand how those work, the data you need, things like that, and I recommend you give that a watch. The next thing you need to do is you set your goals. Make these goals really incremental. So we take step A, and then from step A we can do step B, right? And that will be, we need to be able to handle tickets and have our processes available, and then, add other channels, right? And over time, you're going to add the other teams, you're going to, bring in more data, you're going to get all these things automated, you're going to do all this stuff. Break these goals down further and further and further. If you think of them like atoms, right? You would just want to keep cutting them until you've reached the smallest possible chunk of goal, right? And once you've done that, then you prioritize them and you say, right, well, we need to do these. And then you also set the dependencies. So we have to have this done before we can do that. The next thing you do is you go to training.zendesk.com, and everyone on the project team needs to go and do all the free courses. Okay, I'll let you off doing, the course in talk if you're not implementing that, for instance. But you get the idea. And the important thing here is for everyone to be on the same page, specifically with the jargon. There is nothing worse working on a big project than finding that no one knows what the acronyms mean and things like that. And you spend, most of all of your meetings explaining to everyone, no, well, this is what CSAT is, this is how priorities work, things like that. They need to understand the jargon and how these objects work in a Zendesk instance. Make sure you have that baseline knowledge for everyone working on the project, or it will just be such a headache day after day after day after day. Then go and export everything from your Salesforce and use this as the basis for your Zendesk configuration. So any pre-built bits of text, macros, things like that, any sort of automated processes of, when this happens, it goes to this team, data coming across, all these things. Make sure you really understand it and you have it all exported. The tool I recommend for this is Salto. They know I love it. And when I've come into these gigs and they've said, right, we want to get all of our Salesforce or all of our Zendesk exported, and I say, what you want is Salto. And quite often they go, oh, we're not sure, maybe we could build something using the API, and then they run around in circles for 3 months. Then they come back to me and they say, can you book in a call with Salto for us? So honestly, I would just shortcut that. I don't work for Salto. I just love them. They're really great. And then connect your Zendesk to your Salesforce and ensure that you can transfer information between the two, right? You're going to need to escalate tickets from one to the other, and it's going to be really constant until you've got every team in one system, right? And it might never be the case that every team is in one system. There are always going to be things that might need to go back to maybe an account manager or something like that, who's probably never really going to live in Zendesk. So you need to have all of these information available to go between the two where it's appropriate. Now, where a query forks and might have two separate threads, so maybe someone gets in touch and it's kind of a technical issue, but also kind of an account issue, for example, then you need to just split that into different tickets. Do not be thinking we need to at some point bring all these threads back together. You actually need to update that on the profile of the person so you can, you need to push that information back. It needs to be visible everywhere. But you don't need to kind of be thinking, oh, we need to have maybe a canonical version of this conversation and these side chains and what have you, and then bring them all back together. You're going to overcomplicate your processes. Just split it out, right? Oh, they were also asking about this. That's okay. I'll start a new ticket on that one and we'll have that conversation over there. And then you can always set up something to notify back to the original ticket, right? And it's quite straightforward to maybe have a trigger that sends a notification on another ticket of that user just to say, by the way, this is now resolved as well, right? The other things you need to do, you need to synchronize all your data, right? You don't want to have your customer information different in Salesforce to in Zendesk, and you don't want to be going, oh, hang on, which of these is true? Which of these is the right email? Which of these is the right phone number? Whatever it might be. Just have all that data synchronized. Every time anything changes, it needs to webhook across, what have you, go across the API. Just make sure that wherever your data is coming from, it's in both and it's correct in both and it is equal first priority to have that the same in both, right? And then you need to make sure that all your data from your Zendesk is going into your data lake. You probably already are using some other BI tool with your Salesforce data. You need all of your Zendesk data to day one also be going in there. And again, this is something I see people do wrong. They go, oh no, it's okay. We're actually going to give Zendesk Explorer a go and we're going to see if we can do all our reporting in that for Zendesk initially, and then later we'll connect it so it goes over there and we can look at it in our Power BI. Your data people will curse you for 100 years. Just do it day one. Just day one. You can always look at Explorer, and I think Explorer is really great for people who manage people in Zendesk. So maybe, if you lead a team of agents, it's a really good way to kind of look at their performance and kind of make assessments from that. But if you are the kind of company that's going to have data people and kind of more in-depth QA and things like that, then that's definitely going to need to go into those right systems, and you just need to plumb that in to start with. This needs to be a phase one hard requirement. Your Zendesk processes for these teams are going to match what they were doing in Salesforce. They're having to learn a new platform. Do not also have them learn a whole new way of doing stuff they've been doing for years. Just do it the same way, right? Sometimes there are things that are a little bit different in one platform to another, right? And in that case, this is why you've already done the Zendesk training, is because you need to default to the kind of textbook way of doing Zendesk, right? If you are trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with new ways of things working in Zendesk, and I've seen people say, oh, what if we use organization in a way of like segmenting different user groups, but they're not actually connected in terms of an account? That no. Don't invent new ways of doing things that are well established. If you're looking at it and going, oh, maybe we should, someone asked me if they could have priority increase as SLA breach nears. No, don't do that. You'll have to unpick it in 6 months' time when you realize that this was a big mistake. Don't do that. Keep it real textbook Zendesk. You can invent stuff later on, but in a migration, you just really want to lean into the way the system is designed. That's why you're migrating. You're migrating because it has sensible configuration for the things you want to do. So just make it really, really orthodox, right? And then down the road, you can play when you really understand it. But to get going, just keep it real simple. Then train your agents. I've seen it happen where the switch is flicked and agents are just told, right, now you log in here, now you do it over here. And they go, where are all the buttons I'm used to? Where are all the things I'm used to? Oh yeah, it's the same, but it's also completely different now. Don't do that to them. Give them a good week or so of clicking around in a sandbox or something, right? Just let them run wild. Let them send themselves an email and see what it looks like. They will spot problems, right? They will come in and they will like Kaizen this, right, automatically. So make sure they have, maybe do it in Zendesk. Maybe have a view in Zendesk where they can add tickets that are like feedback ideas, because it will also help them get familiar with the platform. I like to do that. And then migrate one team at a time, right? But the key thing to do while each team is moved is really gather that feedback, gather that information, learn all those lessons for the next step, because that's going to teach you a whole lot more about how it really feels to work in this instance than having that helicopter view. So that's how I migrate a team from Salesforce Service Cloud to Zendesk. And if you want to hear more, I don't know, subscribe, what have you, keep in touch with us, book a call via deltastring.com, and we'll see you next time.